de Margot Fonteyn de Arias, DBE, was an English ballerina. She is widely regarded as one of the greatest classical ballet dancers of all time. She spent her entire career as a dancer with the Royal Ballet, eventually being appointed Prima Ballerina Assoluta of the company by Queen Elizabeth II. Early life: Fonteyn was born Margaret Evelyn Hookham on May 18, 1919 in Reigate, Surrey, to a British father and a half-Irish half-Brazilian mother. Her mother's father was Brazilian industrialist Antonio Fontes. Very early in her career Margaret transformed Fontes into Fonteyn, and Margaret into Margot. Among her father's family were people in literature and music, but he was an engineer. At 4 years of age her mother signed her up for ballet classes with her older brother. At age 8, Margot made the long journey to China with her mother and father, who had taken employment with a tobacco company there. Her brother Felix remained at his school. For 6 years Margot lived in Tientsin, then Shanghai, where she studied ballet with Russian copyright migrant copyright teacher George Goncharov. Her mother brought her back to London when she was 14, to pursue a ballet career. Continuing to work in Shanghai, her father was interned during World War II by the invading Japanese. In 1933 she joined the Vic Wells Ballet School, the predecessor of today's Royal Ballet School, training under the direction of Ninette Dvorlewis and such teachers as Olga Preobrazhenska and Matilda Ksasinska. After starting with the Vic Wells Ballet, she rose quickly through the ranks of the company. By 1939, Fonteyn had performed principal roles in Giselle, Swan Lake and The Sleeping Beauty and was appointed prima ballerina. She was most noted in the ballets of Sir Frederick Ashton, including Ondine, Daphnis and Chloe, and Sylvia. She was especially renowned for her portrayal of Aurora in Tchaikovsky's The Sleeping Beauty. Fonteyn also worked with choreographer Roland Petty and, later in life, Martha Graham. In 1949 when the Royal Ballet toured the United States, Fonteyn instantly became a celebrity for her performances. Stage partners. In the 1940s she and Robert Helpman formed a very successful dance partnership, and they toured together for several years. In the 1950s, she danced regularly with Michael Sums. In 1955 they danced together in the first ever color telecast of a ballet, NBC's production of The Sleeping Beauty. In 1958 they appeared together in the first British televised version of The Nutcracker. She named him the favourite partner of her entire career. Fonteyn began her greatest artistic partnership at a time when many people thought she was about to retire. In 1961, Rudolf Nureyev defected to the West, and on February 21, 1962 he and Fonteyn first performed together in Giselle. She was 42 and he was 24. Their performance was a great success. During the curtain calls Nureyev dropped to his knees and kissed Fonteyn's hand. They created an on- and off-stage partnership that lasted until her retirement in 1979 at age 61, and were lifelong friends. Fonteyn and Nureyev became known for inspiring repeated frenzied curtain calls and bouquet tosses. Sir Frederick Ashton choreographed Marguerite and Armand for them, which no other couple danced until the 21st century. They debuted Kenneth Macmillan's Romeo and Juliet, although Macmillan had conceived the ballet for Lynn Seymour and Christopher Gable. Fonteyn and Nureyev appeared together in the filmed versions of Macmillan's Romeo and Juliet, Swan Lake, Les Sylphides, and the La Course à pas de deux. Despite differences in background and temperament, and a 19-year gap in ages, Nureyev and Fonteyn became close lifelong friends and were famously loyal to each other. Fonteyn would not approve an unflattering photograph of Nureyev. He said about her, "At the end of Lac des Chiens when she left the stage in her great white tutu I would have followed her to the end of the world." The extent of their physical relationship remains unclear. Nureyev said that they had one, while Fonteyn denied it. Her biographer Meredith Deneman agreed with Nureyev. The duo remained close even after she retired to a Panama cattle farm with her husband. She would talk with Nureyev by phone several times a week, although her farmhouse did not have a telephone. When she had to be treated for cancer, he paid many of her medical bills and visited her often, despite his busy schedule as a performer and choreographer. In a documentary about Fonteyn, Nureyev said that they danced with one body, one soul, and that Margot was all he had, only her. An observer said that if most people are at level A, they were at level Z. In the extremely competitive world of ballet, Fonteyn was renowned for her consummate professionalism and loyalty to her friends. Relationships. During the late 1930s and early 1940s, Fonteyn had a long relationship with composer Constant Lambert. Lambert expressed some aspects of this in his ballet horoscope. In 1955, Fonteyn married Dr. Roberto Arias, a Panamanian diplomat to London. Their marriage was initially rocky because of his infidelities. She was arrested when Arias attempted a coup d'état copyright attack against the Panamanian government in 1959. Information released on May 28, 2010 indicated Dame Margot knew of, and at one point was involved in, the coup attempt. In 1964, a rival Panamanian politician shot Arias, leaving him a quadriplegic for the rest of his life. After her retirement, she spent all her time in Panama, and was close to her husband and his children from an earlier marriage. Shortly before her husband's death, in 1989, Fonteyn was diagnosed with a cancer that proved fatal. She died on February 21, 1991 in a hospital in Panama City, Panama, aged 71. Legacy and honors. Fonteyn was awarded a DBE in 1956. She was Chancellor of the University of Durham from 1981 to 1990. The main hall in Dunham House, the Student Union Building, is named the Fonteyn Ballroom in her honor. Also, the foyer to the Great Hall of University College, Durham in Durham Castle is named after Dame Margot Fonteyn. Fonteyn Court, one of the accommodation buildings at the Parsonsfield side of St Cuthbert's Society, is also named in her honor. Margot Fonteyn was one of 5 women of achievement selected for a set of British stamps issued in August 1996. In her hometown of Reargate, a statue stands in tribute. Miscellany. Fonteyn wrote the introduction for Wushu, The Chinese Way to Family Health and Fitness. The book was translated for the Western market by Timothy Tung from a series of official handbooks published in China by the People's Sports Publishing House, Beijing. The Margot Fonteyn Academy of Ballet and Peak Skill, New York is named in her honor. Margot wore Fried of London ballet point shoes in size 4. During her younger years, Margot resided at 44 Waldeck Road, Ealing, London and 3 Elm Grove, Ealing, London. It was at Waldeck Road that Damon writes it was on the polished oak staircase of the house in Waldeck Road that Margot claims to have had an experience of flying. As a dancer, she made her last appearance in Nureyev's 1979 summer season, and in February 1986 she appeared on stage for the last time, as the Queen in The Sleeping Beauty. Film and television. Fonteyn and Nureyev starred together in a color film of Swan Lake in 1967. Under the guidance of director Paul Chiner, they also filmed their famous version of Romeo and Juliet in 1966. Fonteyn presented her own 6-part BBC Two series entitled The Magic of Dance in 1975, exploring the history of dance through 5 centuries, but it seems to have been lost since. The series caused a stir because up to that time she had not been known for speaking on camera. Terry Wogan commented that if that was an amateur speaking, then the professionals should take note. She appeared with Michael Sums in a live U.S. television color production of Tchaikovsky's The Sleeping Beauty, for the anthology series Producers Showcase, on NBC. This production has been preserved on black and white Kinetscope, and released on DVD. Fonteyn starred with Sums in a 1958 British TV production of The Nutcracker. The BBC made a film about Fonteyn in 2009, based on Deneman's biography and starring Anne-Marie Duff as the ballerina. It aired on November 30, 2009. Tony Palmer made a documentary about Fonteyn, titled simply Margot. It includes interviews with Nureyev, Sir Frederick Ashton, Roland Petty, Nanette de Valois, Robert Helpman, Lynn Seymour, Fonteyn's sister-in-law and other relatives, and various members of the Arias family. Main roles. Quotations. The one important thing I have learned over the years is the difference between taking one's work seriously and taking oneself seriously. The first is imperative and the second is disastrous. Great artists are people who find the way to be themselves in their art. Any sort of pretension induces mediocrity in art and life alike. Life off stage has sometimes been a wilderness of unpredictables in an unchoreographed world. Genius is another word for magic, and the whole point of magic is that it is inexplicable. See also, Women in Dance. References. External links, brief bio at ballet.co.uk, The Ballerina Gallery Margot Fonteyn, Margot Fonteyn at People Play UK, brief bio at Surrey Choice Knit, brief bio at My Hero Project, Memories of Margot, The Margot Fonteyn Academy of Ballet, Margot Fonteyn at the Internet Movie Database.